There was a drone attack on the Kremlin, and there's a small video. Let me play it to you, and then I'll get into it. I mean that's really crazy. Honestly, it's pretty crazy. I'll play it again. This surveillance video. I couldn't believe it when I heard the news. I really thought, like, what the hell is happening? You know, because this is quite serious. And you know, whether you support Russia or you hate Russia, I really don't care. When we're talking about geopolitics and we're talking about international relations, you know, the Kremlin is not just some government building or some random, you know, residency. This is a power center on Earth. You know, during the entire Cold War, I mean, it was always the White House and the Kremlin. And in the current situation, it very much is, you know, a similar thing that we're in. And so when someone attacks the Kremlin with a bunch of drones, you should not take that lightly in any regard. Remember, the Russians, they have a protocol for the use of nuclear weapons. And one of those conditions when the Russians would fire nuclear weapons is if the cabinet or the president are threatened. So, I mean, this is basically an attempt on Putin's life. That's serious. That is very grave, and it's very serious because, you know, if the Russians had assessed this to be a much greater threat, now, just to keep you in the loop, no one was hurt. And you know, Putin he wasn't injured or anything, but the symbol of it, you know, the symbolic value of it is very grave. And I want to show you a clip from Zelensky speaking in Finland during his visit in Finland, because the Kremlin came out and said it was the Ukrainians, and then the next day they said it was the Ukrainians helped by the Americans, right? That the Americans are the ones who told them to attack the Kremlin. So let's just take a look at what Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, was saying in Finland.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, you know, enough weapon for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
Remember, you should go follow In Context, because that's my outlet, and we're constantly posting news clips. But let me just say, he honestly sounds sincere. I really want to believe him. He's a good. I know he's an actor. I mean, everyone in politics is. But listen, he does sound sincere, and it's true that the Ukrainians do have a deficit of weapons, but that doesn't rule out, you know, what he's saying does not rule out that the Ukrainians could have done this, or that the Americans could have done it. You know, there are so many parties involved in this war. It's entirely possible that one of them, you know, it actually launched the attack. Here's Kirby, who is the national security spokesperson. Let's see what he had to say.
One thing I can tell you for certain is that the United States was not involved in this incident in any way, contrary to Mr. Peskov's lies. And that's what they are, just lies. Although I will say, you know, from the very beginning, the Russians have been trying to paint this war as some sort of fight with the West against Russia, NATO against Russia, the United States against Russia. So it perfectly fits in his frame, the framing that President Putin has tried to label this war as, like it was some sort of existential threat to Mother Russia, and of course it's not. Russia's the aggressor here.
I mean, I got to admit, he sounds very compelling and funny, but I'm sorry, man. You know, no matter what Kirby says or what the Russians say, this conflict is absolutely NATO versus Russia. It's not Ukraine-Russia. Ukraine is the battlefield, unfortunately. You know, you got so many millions of people who've had to flee, thousands of civilians killed, all at the at the behest of the United States and the Russians, of course, to an extent. You know, it's a fact. But you know, I don't believe you. I'm sorry, because how many times have we had people, White House spokespersons or Pentagon spokespersons, come on camera and lie? We've had that a million times. So why should we believe Kirby? And then he tries to kind of deflect by saying that, oh, this is just, Putin is trying to paint it as this and that. I didn't ask you. No one asked you what Putin is trying to say or paint this as. What about the drone attack on the Kremlin? So here's what the Russians are saying. Let me give you now their side of the story and what they're saying. I mean, obviously they say Ukraine and the US are behind it. This is Peskov, the Russian spokesperson, yeah?
Попытки от этого откреститься и в Киеве, и в Вашингтоне, они, конечно, смехотворны абсолютно. Мы хорошо знаем, что решение о таких действиях, о таких терактах принимается не в Киеве, а именно в Вашингтоне. А Киев уже исполняет то, что ему говорят делать. Собственно, мы знаем, что зачастую даже сами цели определяет не Киев, а их определяют в Вашингтоне, и потом доводят эти цели до Киева с тем, чтобы Киев исполнял. Не каждый раз Киеву дают и право в выборе средств. Это тоже зачастую диктуют из-за океана. Мы это хорошо знаем и отдаем себе в этом отчет. Делить это все надо или не делить, это как угодно. Но в Вашингтоне должны четко понимать, что мы это знаем.
I definitely think there's some truth to what he's saying, because we saw the Crimea bridge blown up. We saw the Nord Stream pipelines destroyed. We saw the Ukrainians being told by the Americans how to target Russian generals. The Moskva was sank. I mean, you've seen a lot of really huge things happen, huge incidents. And what he's saying is true, that the Americans dictate to Kiev what to target and how to do it. And I really feel bad for the Ukrainians. I'm not joking, because they're in a position that they're backed in a corner. They have been backed into a corner. They got the Russians on one side and the Americans on the other. The thing is that they don't understand, the leadership in Ukraine don't understand that the Americans are not their friends. I mean, perhaps the Russians, neither of the Russians, but the Americans don't have their best interests at heart. They really don't. And when you attack the Kremlin, you are changing the rules of engagement and the rules of the game. You are bringing this conflict into a different reality, which you are escalating things. That's what I'm trying to say. Up until now, and Zelensky pointed this out, most of the war is being conducted on Ukraine's soil. Now, I'm not saying that's fair or that's good. I mean, I think many people who sympathize with Ukraine would say that why shouldn't they attack the Russians? Why shouldn't they attack on Russian soil? Russia's in Ukraine, and I understand that. But the Kremlin, is the symbol of Russian power, and it has been for the entire duration of the Cold War, and that has continued to this present day. If you attack the White House, for example, or number 10 Downing Street, I mean, Jesus, do you know what the response would be? The IRA did that with number 10. They were sending these letter bombs and so on. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that the Irish didn't have their reasons, because we've been oppressing them for hundreds of years. But just to give you an analogy, when the IRA, they were sending letter bombs to the Home Secretary and to number 10 Downing Street, the response, the backlash from the British government was brutal. Right, the crackdown was brutal, because you're attacking the power centers of the United Kingdom, and in this case, if you're attacking the Russian, the center of Russia's country, its government, and its sphere of influence. I mean, you are really escalating things. God forbid, what if the Russians next time or this time had thought that this was a much higher threat and then used nuclear weapons, and then we all die, the whole planet dies because some people want to send drones to the Kremlin. I mean, it's wild. Do you think the Russians would do that to the White House? I don't think that the Russians would even dare do that. They know what the response would be. They know what would happen. And if you attacked the White House with drones, I don't care how small or how big, they will come and hunt you down, and they will kill you. They will send a special ops team to track you down, and you will be murdered within days. And if you are a foreign government attacking the White House, the United States will fucking invade you and crush you. So when you're attacking the Kremlin now, don't take for granted that the Russians are just going to shut up and do nothing, because this is a very dangerous game. You are really playing with fire. Whoever did this, Ukraine, the United States, both of them, I really don't care. It doesn't change my point. And I'm going to give you Scott Ritter, who will basically tell you the same thing that I am telling you.
Talking to you from Irkutsk, Russia. Just with a brief comment on the drone attack against the Kremlin that took place last night. Right now, the feeling is that this was an attack carried out, if not directly by Ukraine, definitely on the orders of Ukraine. And I think Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, has said it best, that the Zelensky regime and Zelensky himself will probably have to be liquidated, which means killed. Now, some people out there might think that that's a rather harsh response, but I would ask them to consider in the following. If there was a hostile actor who had said they plan on attacking the White House with drones, and then drones attack the White House, how long do you think it would take for the United States to eliminate them from the face of the earth? And the answer is not very long. So it's a double standard, a little bit of hypocrisy, to have a situation where the Ukrainians say, we plan on sending drones to attack Moscow on or about May 9th, Victory Day, and then a pair of drones arrives in Moscow and hits the Kremlin. The Ukrainians said they were going to do it. It was done. And now I think the Ukrainians are going to be held fully accountable for it. How and when this will occur, it's a decision only the Russian government can make. But I think Dmitry Medvedev's sentiment is shared widely amongst the Russian people, and there will be an accounting, and it isn't going to end well with for Zelensky. Thanks for giving me a chance to address this, and hope to talk to you soon.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Exactly how Scott put it.